From the Detroit Free Press, I'm Robin Chan with today's Voice Briefing. It's Friday, December 20th, 2024.
I'm Dave Boucher with the Detroit Free Press. The criminal case against two right-wing provocateurs who spread inaccurate robocalls ahead of the 2020 election can proceed to trial, the Michigan Court of Appeals recently ruled. This case remains open years after charges were filed, thanks in part to broader questions about criminalizing speech, prompting the Michigan Supreme Court to create a new rule that may impact campaign rhetoric for years to come. Jacob Wohl and Jack Berkman faced multiple felonies that could result in years behind bars. The charges came after the pair pushed robocalls in the Detroit area that falsely stated people requesting an absentee ballot would provide information to the government that would be used to collect debts, serve warrants, and forcibly administer vaccines. Attorney General Dana Nessel said their actions amount to criminal meddling in the elections. Lawyers for the defense say they have First Amendment protections, and the men have pleaded not guilty. Earlier this year, the Michigan Supreme Court decided the law Nessel used to charge the men was too broad. Instead, they created a new three-pronged test they believe courts and prosecutors need to use to determine if election messaging meets the high bar of criminal conduct. The three factors are: the language must intentionally be false, it must relate to, quote, voting requirements or procedures, and the language must be designed to, quote, deter or influence an elector's vote. Using that test, the Michigan Court of Appeals voted 2-1 that prosecutors had a reasonable chance to prove their case at trial. The dissenting judge said he did not believe prosecutors could prove the two men spread information specifically about, quote, voting requirements or procedures. Scott Grable, a lawyer for the accused, noted that dissent while discussing the likely chance of taking their case back to the Michigan Supreme Court. Nessel heralded the appellate court's decision, promising to push forward with either the criminal trial or additional review if the Michigan Supreme Court agrees to re-examine the case.
This is Julie Hines of the Detroit Free Press. If you were a reader of Captain Video's television reviews, you experienced the creativity, sense of humor, and encyclopedic knowledge that Mike Duffy brought to the job of being the Detroit Free Press television critic. If you knew him as a friend or colleague, you were even luckier. Duffy died Monday, a year after being diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. He was 79. The former Free Press TV critic was a popular media personality in the Motor City and a nationally respected voice for his innate ability to cover the small screen with fun and affection while still holding its content to his scrupulous standards. Long before contemporary marketing types urged journalists to develop a brand for themselves to drive online traffic, Duffy was the real deal. He didn't have to craft a persona because he already was a writer with a distinctive voice and an ability to draw others into his enthusiasm. And even with the daily grind of tracking the constantly expanding supply of TV shows, he never became jaded. He embraced later breakthrough hits like HBO's The Sopranos with as much vigor as earlier classics like NBC's Hill Street Blues, which he considered the single most influential show of his tenure. Mike was the happy warrior of television coverage, said former Free Press features editor John Smintek. He liked the medium. Lots of critics looked down at the medium as the great wasteland. That was not Mike.
I'm Andrew Burkle with the Free Press Sports Department. It is a huge weekend ahead for the Detroit Lions. Before last game against the Bills, all was looking well and good for the Lions. They'd won 11 straight games, and believe it or not, the team was actually starting to get more healthy. Then, everything flipped. The Lions couldn't slow down MVP favorite Josh Allen and allowed 48 points to the high-powered Bills offense. Along the way, they lost Carlton Davis, Ali McNeil, and David Montgomery to injuries, all out for the season most likely. I mean, that is a tough pill to swallow. The Lions have already lost Aiden Hutchinson, a whole batch of linebackers, and just about every defensive lineman has been out at some point or the other this year. So losing McNeil especially, but Davis and Montgomery too, that might just be too much for any team to overcome. And that seemed to be all that anyone could talk about, and rightfully so. But if any team could, it just might be these Lions. Dan Campbell went on the radio this week, and it feels like he's giving fans a tiny breath of air. It was an epic rant from Campbell like only he can, talking about moldy bread and fillets and everything in between. So how do the Lions move forward from here? Well, it starts with Campbell and, his one-of-one motivation tactics. He is unique in that way in getting a team moving forward. It also starts Sunday against a Bears squad they already beat on Thanksgiving that seems to take 2 steps backwards every time they go forward. But still, their game on Thanksgiving was anything but easy, and now the Lions will be even more shorthanded. However, here's the thing. For the first time in a long time, it feels like the Lions have a legitimate underdog feel. I know, it's strange. It's a team who won 11 straight games, but let's be real. It's what Lions fans are all comfortable with anyways. And Dan Campbell and his Lions squad, they wear it well. So this Sunday feels like the start of a new chapter for the Lions. The final chapter of the season? Yeah, most likely. Either get it together and hold on to the 1 seed over the final 3 games, or lose your luster, play a road game in the first round, and who knows from there. But either way, this Sunday's game against the Bears feels like a make or break for where this season is heading.
Find more from the Detroit Free Press on Freep.com. That's FREEP.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend, and you'll hear more from us Monday.